Hey everyone, welcome to the First Three Knocks. It's Brother Steve Sprott here, and before we begin, I just want to let you know about the awesome stuff that our friends at Fraternal Ties have available on their website. They have everything from Masonic footwear and t-shirts to unique things like Masonic pillows and custom bow ties. They just came out with a beautiful natural acacia watch. It's a beautiful timepiece and it's loaded with Masonic symbolism. Check them out at fraternalties.com. You will not be disappointed. fraternalties.com.
On today's episode, we're sitting down with Dr. Kim Redman, CEO of Creatrix Go Quantum.
You're listening to The First Three Knocks, a Masonic podcast in the District of York, where we discuss topics for the betterment of Masonry. The opinions discussed in this podcast are those of the individual and do not represent the views of Grand Lodge or any other Masonic body. Now, here are your hosts.
Well, good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Good morning. We're back in the Aurora Temple.
We're home.
Aurora, Ontario. Yeah, we're home.
Yeah, it's been a while.
Been traveling a little bit, huh? I am Worshipful Brother Bert Tellier, the past master of the Rising Sun Lodge here in Aurora, Ontario, with our co-host.
Brother Gino Scovio, now the junior warden of the Rising Sun.
Oh, the JW. And our talented producer.
I don't have a mic, so you'll have to introduce me.
Brother Steve Sprott from Zaradatha Lodge in Uxbridge, Ontario. And today we have the great honor and pleasure of welcoming our friend and guest, Dr. Kim Redman. She is the CEO of Creatrix Go Quantum. She is a certified master trainer, speaker, and coach, author of international best-selling #1 book, international founder of Quantum Leadership, Quantum NLP, Coaching and Hypnosis. And also, she is the wife of our very own worshipful brother, Mike Redman, and our very good friend. Welcome, Dr. Kim.
Thank you, guys. Good morning. That was a beautiful introduction on a lovely Sunday morning. Happy Yule to everyone.
Happy Yule.
Happy Yule.
Thanks for coming in today. We were very excited that you had agreed to come on the show. You have a very unique background. You have some great insight about Masonry, having spent a lot of time around certainly York District Masons and beyond, being married to one of our most illustrious brothers as well, offers some deep insight into the life of a wife of a Mason. And also you have this really unique business that you run that is around leadership and study of self and esoteric meanings. So we would love to learn more about that, of course. But I think that probably the easiest place for us to start is your relationship with very worshipful brother Mike Redman. How did that come to be?
You know, the universe has a sense of humor. When Mike and I first met, we were friends. Well, not friends in the beginning. We irritated the heck out of each other.
Oh, that sounds appropriate.
Yeah, just completely. And it took us many years to realize that that was chemistry.
Yeah.
And we stayed and became very good friends, drinking buddies. We both were married to other people.
Oh, okay.
Stayed friends. And then both of our marriages kind of went south at about the same time period. And once again, friends, consoling friends, and then we were more than friends.
Oh.
And people who knew us all went, well, it's about time. And we were shocked.
It's about time.
And we were shocked. Totally shocked. And there you have it. And I think because we had 11 years as best friends before we had this relationship, it just had a depth that I think neither of us knew was possible. So this is not my husband, this is my mate.
Right. It was natural.
Awesome.
It was
I
natural.
had that natural connection.
Absolutely. And that was actually part of the founding of Creatrix very early on.
Oh, yeah?
Was done in such a way so that Mike and I could travel. When we transitioned here in Canada, and also obviously the company grew as we grew, because although Creatrix was started in the United States in 1992 around alternate learning with at-risk kids,
Okay.
using arts and education through my work with the Arts and Education Center out of Lincoln Center.
Ah, okay.
When I immigrated to Canada and I landed in 2000, then Mike and I were able to get married, and I started kind of a kitchen table company.
Right. What a great way to start a company, huh?
Yeah,
It's just
absolutely.
Grounds up.
And all around Hannah being in school, so that we could support that. And then in spite of myself, because I started on the esoteric side with the Journey of Truth program, which you can still go to that website, journeyoftruth.com,
Right.
and just see where that all started. And it's where East meets West for quantum success. And as we grew, one of my friends said to me, you know, we're going to take this hypnosis course, and if we have 3 people, we pay less. You're the 3rd person.
And the journey begins.
And the journey begins.
Open up another chapter.
And it really did. And my instructor was an instructor in neuro-linguistic programming, timeline therapy, hypnosis, and he was bored. And we watched him blow out some lifetime phobias and chronic pain
Oh, wow.
in 20 minutes or less. And I said, you know, you have my undivided attention. How do I learn how to do that? And I have to thank Chris Howard. Shout out to Chris Howard in California.
Yeah.
Because he also was the one who put the seed in my head for getting my doctorate. He had me write my name on a board and then put the word doctor in front of it.
And let that sink in.
And just let that sink in. And then gave me a lot of, with permission, hypnotic suggestions to really focus that and just let the seed spread. And I forgot about it.
Of course. Yeah.
And years later, it happened.
It happened.
So it went back in there somewhere and marinated.
Exactly.
And it worked.
Grew roots. It always does.
Yeah.
10,000 times more focus on what you want is a cool thing to have.
Absolutely. That is brilliant.
It's a solid power to tap into. And it's hard to tap into, but I'm sure we'll learn a little bit today.
Yeah. So before you met Mike, had you been around Freemasons at all? Did you know anything about Freemasonry?
Nothing.
No?
Nada, bupkis, nothing.
Not even our symbols out there in, like, you know.
I knew that there were Masons, but I knew nothing about Masons. Actually, my information about Masons was misinformation.
Very common.
Because one of my partner's fathers was a Mason, and the mother had no information and was busy spreading misinformation.
Oh, my. So common. Yeah.
It is so common. And you know what? In a vacuum, nature abhors a vacuum, so something takes root. So my initial thoughts around Masonry were not exactly Zen. And I needed to get educated. And really, that's what it's about.
Yeah.
Always education.
Right. Yeah, it really is who you are. You're always searching for more learning, deeper
Right.
learning, deeper understanding. Having been around Freemasons and Mike for quite a while now, what is your impression or what's your take on Freemasonry? You probably are the most enlightened around Freemason person who's not in Freemasonry that we know. What would be your take on Freemasonry?
I truly believe the slogan that Masons make good men better rocks.
Yeah?
Absolutely. And my introduction into Masonry overlapped with my beginning of my doctoral program. And as part of my doctoral program, one of the courses I was taking was around Masonry and the Templars.
Oh, wow.
So I actually got it from both sides. And I like external evidence. External evidence is really good. So when you actually see changes happening, like here's my awesome mate, he's a great guy.
Yeah.
And I'm watching him turn into a better man. And I went, well, okay then.
There's something going on here.
There's something going on there. And also universally in all of the mystery schools, because my doctorate is in ancient esoterics. My thesis is in quantum leadership that I opened up, which is basically what are the core competencies, skill sets, and behaviors of leadership that have been taught by the ancient systems all over the world. Mm-hmm. And in all of the systems, you get to a certain place where women teach women and men teach men. And then they would come together at great ceremonies, because there is a safety in that. There's a sharing in that. And from a science perspective, our brains do work differently.
Mm-hmm. We are wired differently.
We are wired differently.
By design.
By design. Yeah. And therefore, certain skill sets are better transmitted from men to men and women to women. And the brotherhood is, I think, something that is universally missing in society.
Mm. How can you elaborate on that?
Absolutely. Unless you were in the military, mm-hmm. where you learned about brotherhood, mm-hmm. or you were a scout when you were a boy, there's very few places where men can get together and learn leadership and learn empowerment with a structured system underneath them, with local, provincial, national support underneath them. Mm-hmm. There are very, very few organizations that actually exist. And the fact that no religion is required, just a belief in a higher power, I think opens the door also to weaving this tapestry that is so prolific and so much of our core identity as Canadians. Mm. It really, really supports this tapestry. You know, people come together in brotherhood, in sharing, in growth, for the ups, the downs, the good, the bad, the ugly of it.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And still there's harmony and growth individually. And what I also love about it is it's a structure where going through the chairs themselves and the different positions in the lodge actually creates entropy. And nothing can grow without entropy. A seed can't sprout without the entropy of water and heat. Mm-hmm. Our muscles can't grow. Our neurology cannot grow unless it's under entropy. And so to have a predetermined amount of entropy and the support to go through that process actually makes it sustainable.
Wow, it's extremely well said. Have you ever heard a description
I've
so
never
well
heard of it or
articulated?
Thought, again, I think of it in different ways, and I think I'm going to continue to say that in my tenure of Masonry. I always say, why are all men not Masons? Like, the world should and would, and I think for what I've learned so far, and it's just scratching the surface, be a much better place. And I mean, to put it so eloquently, like Dr. Kim just put
Thank
it.
Thank you.
Wow, that was amazing.
Thank you. I really think it's important. We need these spaces and places in our world and in our society where we can grow into leadership. No one pops out a leader.
Yeah.
Those skill sets have to be fostered. They have to be mentored. The fact that there's a huge age range in a lodge.
Mm-hmm. The ultimate challenge in leadership.
Right, absolutely. And everywhere in society, we're missing places where we can get the stories and wisdom of our elders.
Yeah.
And so to be able to have that component in as well, Bob Butler was a huge influence.
Yeah.
And still is in both of our lives. And I remember my first big Masonic Gala.
Uh-huh. What was it? Do you remember what it was?
It was the Grand Master's
Banquet.
Oh,
okay.
That year. And I walked in and I looked around and I had this overwhelm. And I had that feeling in church, like, where do you stand? Do you kneel? Like, what's coming up next? And Dorothy just took me under her wing.
Yeah.
as Bob had taken Mike under his. And she goes, "You just sit right here, dear. We'll get you through this." And it was amazing. She's so funny.
Yeah.
And she's regal and elegant and down to earth at the same time. And so there you go. There's another example of, I'm not supposed to figure this out by myself. I'm supposed to learn interdependence.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That's a great story.
Yeah.
Huh?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I still carry the little purse holder in all of my purses, so my purse doesn't touch the floor. It hangs off the table. Thank you.
It's the small touches,
It's
huh?
the small
Just
touches.
Perfect. As you've got a lot of experience being around Masonry, of course, like the story you just described. What advice would you give to the women who are in the lives of Masons? I mean, you've got a lot of experience with that.
Yes, and I think this is one of the areas where we can increase our support. I think if I wasn't the personality that I was, with the background that I had, it would have been very easy to be intimidated by or left out of the process. And we want to always avoid an absence of information. So what I would say to the wives, especially young wives, when you have families with young kids, is this is an opportunity for the couple to grow. I know that we both grew through this process. It's actually a fabulous opportunity for increased sharing, redesignation of and negotiation of how you're going to run your household and who's doing what with the kids.
Right.
And that there are other wives of Masons in the lodge. And so one of the things when Mike was master of the lodge, is I made sure that I was present at everything that I could be present for, and to make myself available to some of the younger wives.
Oh, okay.
And I think that that's not nearly as structured, but that's really an area where there could be reach outs, where there could be a social meeting. I would love to see in the lodge where there's a wives' night, so that more established women in the lodge with their partners who kind of get what's going on can naturally address some of the concerns of what's going on with my husband and why is he not home with me 3 nights this week.
But I think it's also, we just had worshipful brother Bob York host another ladies' night for us.
Yes.
Used to be called Widows' Night, and he thought it appropriate to call it Ladies' Night. Let's celebrate
Special
the ladies.
Night.
And for him, exactly what you were saying, the add-on to that was so that when Masonry is done for men and we've gone to the Grand Lodge above, there's a support system also for the women to reach out to each other, to know each other, that they can have as well. And again, it's just exactly what we should see more of in the lodges.
Absolutely. When just the timing, and I've learned that lodges go through cycles also. And when Mike was entering the lodge, it just so happened that there was no wife support around the lodge.
Oh, so the men were left to their own devices.
Right, at this point. And there's probably some stories and valid reasons why that occurred.
Yeah.
And for Mike and I to come in as partners, and we said we want to bring, this balance of the sacred male, female, which we have in our own relationship, into this position as well. And when I tell you that men were shocked to see me at the barbecue.
Oh, yeah.
And one of the great fun stories is I said, I'm going to come to the barbecue and I'm going to assist in serving. And it was outdoors. And again, Bob Butler was one of the first people who were there. And he was like, there's a woman here. I said, yes, and I'm getting you some food. What would you like? Would you like a hot dog? Would you like a hamburger? And by the time Doug Hotham showed up, Doug originally scrunched his forehead at me. It was like, there's a woman here. And Bob Butler said, yes, sit down. She's feeding us. Be polite, say thank you. And of course, you know, we grew into have such an incredible relationship with both of those Masons. And, you know, Doug coming over and bringing me the extra soup from the lodge and his soup recipes.
Oh, wow.
And, you know, they just became, Doug was such a light in our lives.
Yeah, he was.
And, you know, looking at his portrait in here, I just had a moment this morning.
Oh, is that right?
I was like, oh, I miss him.
Yeah, we all do.
Mm-hmm.
We all do.
But he's here. He's still here.
He is here.
You can feel him in a
We
different
feel
way.
him.
Yes, absolutely.
Looking forward a little bit on Masonry, what do you think are some of the challenges ahead for Freemasonry?
Visibility is the first thing that comes to my mind. I think there was some confusion over what's the difference between, you know, we're not advertising, we're not knocking on doors, versus inviting people.
Mm-hmm.
Can we still invite people?
Solicitation and non-solicitation, that's a big topic.
Right.
And discussion we always have, and it's, again, a fine line of how do you...
I think, and my opinion, if you're asking, is that because people were so cautious about not soliciting, that there are places where it seemed as if people forgot to invite.
Yeah.
Right. Blanket approach to all of it.
Right, all of it. How about invitation? How about, I love the open houses that you guys are part of, the street fair. However, were there other places
Right.
where you can openly take part in to be seen as part of the community structure?
That's what it's founded on too, right? Community.
Right.
And I think we need to bring more of that back.
Right. If there's a community initiative already in place in a town, how can the lodge plug into that, perhaps? Appreciating the challenges with everyone's schedules and things that are going on, and yet to blend that so that, you know, ooh, there's Masons up on a hill someplace.
Don't ever talk to them.
Right, right. And I would love to see that. Also, I think what you guys are doing is really nailing it, moving with the times on how we're actually communicating. And the reality is we are communicating now with social media and podcasts and all of these other forms of communication, up-to-date websites and e-blasts. And I think the more that we can for all of us, stay plugged in to transition, it becomes easier and easier to invite.
Right.
Well, it's easy to build on that when we have Grand Lodges across the world, and especially Grand Lodge of England, that starts to do things like shows on Netflix to really promote the positive side of Masonry. That is, again, you know, you do a search online and you probably find one or two good things to as many, you know, myths of what Masonry might be about. And then to have, you know, forums like this, and Brother Sprott's done a fantastic job of putting this together, but he's also found a whole bunch of different Masonic podcasts throughout what we think is America, and a couple here in Canada, and we're hearing of more starting it. What is it those guys up in Illinois call it? It's like the golden age of Masonic podcasts right now.
Nice.
And now we are doing some more videos and such. So again, it's really needs to kind of be explored. But I think we're seeing that newer, younger generation come in and
It's demanding that.
and they're a bit more plugged
They're
in,
demanding that.
but they know how that plug-in works, right?
Right.
Whereas I think we got to that point where when it was first starting, you know, we were at that, well, what is all this new technologies and how does it really work? But absolutely, you know, putting those, opening those doors, doing those community events, participating as much as you can. It's not like, you know, you go down, lay a wreath at the centipath, and it's like, who are those guys with those?
Who are those
aprons?
guys?
Now
Yeah.
they know, you know, now they know
Right.
who they are, and it's happening everywhere. So it's so refreshing to see that.
Absolutely. And speaking to the misinformation, that's the same in all of the mystery schools universally.
Oh, yeah.
Because the whole point of the mystery schools is really that they're not so mysterious. It's that you need, if you want to know more information, you need to find somebody that's in one of the mystery schools and ask them, and you need to begin the journey.
Right.
And therefore, esoteric information is really for those that have taken those steps. Exoteric information is what's given out to the public. And I think that's really the first step for anyone that's interested, is it's not a do it to me.
Right.
This is a do with process. And if you're going to grow, you've got to step up.
You have to want to grow.
You have to want to grow.
Yeah. Roll up your sleeves and do the work. Nobody does it for you. Nobody's going to roll your sleeves up. You got to really want to get into the thick of it.
Right.
And educate.
Absolutely.
And
for your
do
own
the
personal
workshops,
reasons.
the seminars. Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely. There's got to be buy-in. And as people go through that journey, things that were mysterious are now very open-ended for them.
Yep.
Because they're on the journey. So there really are very few secrets. The big secret, I think, is that you just have to show up.
Yeah.
Yeah, but as a society, we're almost trained not to do that, right? We are trained to be fed.
Correct.
And I mean, I see this with my daughters even. Sometimes I'll get a little frustrated because I view it as being lazy a little bit. And I'm sure when I was their age, I was dramatically more lazy. They at least have a spark going, right? But it strikes me being a parent now that they're being trained to think in a certain way and absorb information in a certain way and get scores on a test. But it doesn't drive deep level thinking.
Right.
It's almost surface thinking.
It is. And we now have, according to science, the attention span that is lower than a goldfish.
Oh, nice.
Isn't that nice?
Did we work our way up to lower than a goldfish? Because we
worked our way.
We were a gnat.
What did you just say?
We were above and we worked our way down.
Nice work.
Nice work.
Humanity.
I think one of the things that's missing, I love technology. Mike loves technology, and we have all the devices, and we use them all the time. Technology can be used to connect people, and I think that's when it's at its most elite. And there are also places and spaces where technology is perhaps taking the place of true connections.
Right.
And how we think about things. You know, societally speaking, the pendulum swings very slowly from place to place. So just as a quick example, in the 50s, there were no issues. No one had issues. In the 60s, there was an exploration of self. So in the 70s, there was an exploration of drugs in order to cover the pain of the exploration.
Right.
In the 80s, it was about talk shows. In the 90s, it was about self-help groups. And it wasn't until just after 2000 where it started to be about, you know, Oprah saying, it doesn't matter what your mama did or your daddy didn't do. There's no excuse for not having your life the way you want it.
Absolutely.
Let's kind of step up and step in. And one of the things that builds these skills are recovery strategies. It's not about not falling off the bicycle. It's about how to pick the bicycle back up again after you've fallen off of it. And we used to have a lot of mentorships and co-ops that were part of our schooling that would train the practical skill sets. And in this time period, we've gone as a society almost 100% academic.
Right.
And academic cannot ground and sprout without a physical something behind it. And so it's really, they say there are two pillars of wisdom. And in order to have both pillars, we have to be studying academically and then applying practically, which makes our cup bigger so that we can actually take in more of the academic and therefore do more practically. And it's the practical side of things that we've gone away from. And I'm sure in time that pendulum will start to swing back.
So true, because you hear so many university students after, you know, taking a 4 or 5 or 6 year degree and going on, I can't find a job with what I just learned in all the theory. Maybe you didn't have some of the practical skill set, right?
Right.
And we talk about that at home. My daughter is not as, my youngest one right now is not so into the academics because, like we said about scores, What's the point of somebody saying I got 70 or 80 or 90%? You know, I'm not going to know X to the power of Y is Z. I like to do this. I like to do creative makeup for movie type things, and that's my passion. So why would I? So she's really coming out of her shell and questioning, you know, I guess, what's next in life. And to me, that's exciting.
Yes.
How do you guide that? How do you get her to understand, you know, society says, unfortunately, we have to do certain things, but there'll be a point where you can create where you go, you know?
Right. And I think that's, again, keeping the knowledge abstract.
Yeah.
So you're into makeup. Well, you're going to do a show. How much makeup do you need to order? Do the math for me.
Right.
Yeah. There's an element there that
There
is
is
required.
an element
And there's
of
that
there
balance, right?
that is the requirement that you wouldn't think of if you weren't doing the practical mentorship side of it.
Right.
You know, why do I need to learn this? Well, because you're going to land on your behind without it.
Yep.
And you're right. I think learning for memorization's sake in schools is different than actually learning for life skills.
Right.
And we used to have a lot of these other social-centric places in our society, if we're just speaking about this now, you know, as an academic overview. For example, the church used to be the center of a community.
Yeah.
And therefore, mentorships, reach out, practical skill sets, all of these applications were part of society. So I think, you know, the more that we can reach out, use our technology to really connect, and then invite people to the analog experience. Because pretty much right now we're in an analog revolution.
Yep.
And it's the pushback from everything going all digital and everyone saying, oh, I can be an expert.
Yeah. Like this app, I could do anything.
Right. I believe mastery still requires 10,000 hours,
It
folks.
might. It might still be the case.
It might still be the case. And people are wisening up. You know, if you're looking for the magic pill,
Yeah.
you're not going to grow.
Well, you know, if we apply this to masonry, you know, an entered apprentice doesn't jump into worshipful master within 1 year.
Thank God.
He has to learn and grow as he goes. So the design of our modern day masonry of 300 years, you know, it's time tested and true. And again, it's why outside of, you know, the charitable side that Masons can be a part of, it's like, I wish more people were Masons.
Right, because from my perspective, it's about behavior. And when we can get people into skill sets and behaviors that are around leadership, then they become better humans. And they do differently. And I like actually different versus better. Maya Angelou said that. When I know differently, I do differently. And when you have an individual that grows, the relationship grows, the family grows, the workplace grows. And that's what I love about all of the ancient systems, because the skill sets that they're teaching at each step are pretty much universal.
Right, right. That is a great point that you raise, and maybe we could shift a little bit into some of the work that you're doing now in your business and,
Sure.
and what you do. Your study, maybe talk to us a little bit about your study of the ancient systems and how that led to this company that you guys have created.
Absolutely. So today in 2019, I have been involved for 33 years on the practical aspect of the ancient systems, and involved in many of them along my teaching and learning, because just as the sacred geometry of the seed of life and the flower of life overlap and connect with the two rings, all of these systems are really about skill sets. Some of them go from abstract or philosophical to practical. Others go from practical up to philosophical. And they're all about pulling a greater, higher frequency of energy, literally, electromagnetically, into your body. And that energy gets disseminated out through your endocrine system. So here's some ancient mystery stuff that's universal
please,
right
share,
here.
share, yeah.
And the trinity of glands that actually handles that is the pineal gland, the pituitary gland, and the hypothalamus in our brain. And the pineal gland is where we actually channel down what could be called your higher self. If I'm talking science and dimensional theory, it's everything above the third dimension. Okay. And therefore, you will find pine cones in all of the symbolism all over the world, even where there are places where there are no trees or pine trees. As an example, the Pope's staff has a pine cone on the end of it. So any of the systems where there was an exoteric, out for the people, and esoteric, the same symbols are used. So in my study, for me, it wasn't about wanting to grow. It was about wanting to get a handle on some hyperactive intuitive abilities. And like any good superhero, as your abilities sprout, you become the victim of your own story.
Yeah.
You know, you just want to fit in like everyone else. Why can't we
But it's
do
harder.
this? It's harder. You make a drama out of it until you realize that it's not that you're on the outside looking in. Although that is true. You begin to realize that there's a bubble that people are trapped under, and if you turn around, you have access to the stars. And our abilities to reach out and reach up while we reach back to pull somebody with us, you know, to lead as we grow. And so my systems, I was lucky enough at every crisis of my life to find a series of teachers. Whether that was in Wicca, whether that was a lot of work in the indigenous communities, probably a 20-year study still ongoing in the Kabbalistic systems, Rosicrucian, Egyptian alchemy. And that was part of why the PhD in ancient esoterics was suggested to me. They went, well, you have all the practical, and you've been teaching others for so many years. Why don't you go get the academic side of it?
Right.
And what fascinated me about the process was the universality of how human we all are and have been, how all of the systems were teaching the same skills, how much more we have alike as a people than separateness. From even the names of the divine. Like, I love the name Allah, the all-ah, the all-breath. You know, such a sacred and amazing name. You begin to look at the ceremonies. The ceremonies are the same, from the practical to the abstract. Tiling the temple, you have a tiler. When we tile the temple in the practical mystery schools, it means we are literally setting up an electromagnetic space with sacred geometry. So there's a circle, or a sphere, actually. And in every tradition, guardians come in that sit in 4 places. And there is a tile ceremony that seals the space.
Wow. This is universal across
This is
all
universal
of them.
across
Yeah.
all of the systems. And in the Wiccan system, someone that's going to be the tiler is called the Black Dog. And works on behalf of the High Priestess to either keep bad guys out energetically or physically.
Right. You just hit on a really interesting point we've discussed here on the First Three Knocks a few times with different guests. And that is the experience of coming into lodge for Freemasons. Coming into lodge Thursday night for us here at the Rising Sun. Everyone's rushing to get here on time. Life is busy, work is difficult, family responsibility, financial responsibility. And we've all had this experience coming into lodge, and the door is tiled and the space changes. And you
Literally.
change. You physically change.
Literally
sitting
changes.
in the space. And I think that's what you're describing from
Yes.
the universal.
Whether that's a church, whether you're in an indigenous ceremony, a Wiccan ceremony, a Rosicrucian ceremony, just all over the world, in all of the systems, it's the same. And the other thing that happens is you can't come in your normal clothes.
Right.
There's always something that has to shift for your dress. And therefore, they say that's, in the magical systems, that's the difference between a wand and a stick. A wand is a stick until you only pick it up inside of a tiled environment.
Oh, wow.
And then it picks up a charge, and it acts as an anchor to your unconscious mind to higher self, that when I put on these garments, this is what we're doing.
Right. It's the preparation.
Absolutely. And therefore, there's, in the more practical systems, there's an ancient, everyone has to cleanse.
Uh-huh.
And then you put on clothes that are only in that environment. And then you walk in and you tile the space and seal it. And that sealing of the space also acts as entropy. Because whatever happens in that space, there's an actual pressure to it. There's a weight in the space. It feels different. Mm-hmm. It absolutely feels different because it is. And in those environments, you're actually activating neurotransmitters that you don't activate at any other time that open you up to more possibility.
Wow.
So I got 10 more meetings.
Yeah,
That's what
bingo.
exactly.
And that's the other thing about going to practical spaces, is there's a physiological shift that you can't get academically sitting at home reading about it with a book or watching a YouTube video.
Right.
There is no substitute for
The
that.
physical aspect is the requirement.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That is
again,
amazing.
Bert just said it. We've talked about this on some travels up north to Sutton with very worshipful brother Bruce Bellows. You have those difficult moments in life, and you call and, hey, you want to go to a meeting? And it just, the second that door closes, like Bert said, like you said, within the tiled space, man, the world just seems like it's so much smaller, and everything inside gets better. And I just feel on my personal side, lighter and comforted. And I'm amongst brothers here in the lodge, and they want the best for me,
Absolutely.
and I want the best for them. So I do a lot of traveling, and I think it's kind of like re-energizing my kind of, tank that goes a little bit empty sometimes, and it just,
Absolutely.
boom, brings me back.
And there you go. And there's really the other side of visiting.
Yeah.
And visiting other lodges. Are you dipping yourself into that flavor because it's shifting you and growing you? And that's the amazing aspect of working within that system, because from a science perspective, what you're tapping into is the 96% of information that quantum physics would call dark matter and dark energy, dimensional theory outside of our awareness. If I showed you an astrophysics slide on how much of reality is real, it actually comes down to less than 1% of what we perceive of in the real solid world. And we need to be in these other environments before we begin to open ourselves to really the information that's there, and what happens in the information when you actually create a morphogenic field. And when in that field, information is shared in a way that is been proven to be quantum. So the group together is truly synergistic. It's bigger than its individual components.
It's amazing.
Incredible.
Yeah, like my mind's just blowing
Yeah.
as we talk. Like every few seconds, I'm like, wow.
Well, this is one of the reasons as well, aside from being a wonderful person and married to our very worshipful brother, Mike Redman, we wanted to dig in a little bit
Thank you.
on these topics and understand a little more. So Tell us a little bit about your company now, the work that you are doing. I mean, there's a lot of different areas you cover in it.
There is, and we're really in a blessed position that through the trust of our clients over the years, we've recently built into a global place where we're working with quantum consciousness and leadership. So what we do is our company is Canada's biggest company for board designations in neuro-linguistic programming, timeline therapy, hypnosis, and NLP results coaching, and is the master trainer for the country. I'm able to actually offer designations that are good in over 38 countries at the practitioner level, the mastery level, and the institute level, meaning that I can open up other institutes who can then designate practitioners and master practitioners. And why we got involved in those skill sets was, again, the instructor that was my hypnotherapy instructor. When I went through the courses, I realized that I was going further in hours than I was with the traditional cognitive techniques. So in our consciousness, just again, straight numbers, because I'm a very pragmatic woman, 90% of our consciousness is outside of our awareness. 10% of our mind is conscious. So when we are attempting to learn, all our learning, all our behavior, and all of the changes that happen that we seek are actually guided by your unconscious mind and your filters, not your conscious thinking.
Which consciously we would think is in control.
Right, exactly. So the conscious mind sets the goals, and your unconscious mind goes and gets the goals or doesn't. And that's why New Year's resolutions that are entirely conscious are usually dead within 17 days of setting them.
Right.
And so what we found was, in order to work the skill sets, again, behaviors, core competencies, and skill sets of leadership, we needed to be able to, like a phone, upgrade our apps and sometimes upgrade our operating system. And that's why so many fields use those elite skill sets, from conscious entrepreneurs to the military, fire, and police,
Right.
teachers, doctors, nurses, psychologists, and a lot, as I said, of conscious entrepreneurs tend to gravitate to us. And it doesn't matter whether they started in the esoteric half of things and now they want to be able to do the skill sets, or they have the skill sets and they want to be able to grow into the esoteric side of things. That's where our company handles that.
Right. So you are helping individuals, I assume, and teams as well,
Yes.
tap into that unconsciousness.
Absolutely. And how to use the right tool for the right job. It's exactly the same as attempting to build a house with a hand hammer rather than a pneumatic nailer. We have both because we're supposed to use both, but up until very recently, we didn't have the manual for both. So these are not complicated skill sets. We just need to be shown how to work the system the right way, because we're using the system usually the wrong way in the beginning.
And the system is you.
Right.
Your being, yourself,
Absolutely.
your everything, your energy, your makeup, everything.
So for example, if you could change the tape in your head, who could you be?
Yeah.
Let me show you how to change the tape in your head.
And you're talking about that voice that is talking to yourself all day long.
Yep.
Convincing yourself of who you are, or destroying who you are,
Right.
or building who you could be.
Right, exactly. And from our point of view, we like to say to people, how do you know which voice is real?
Yeah.
And it's a very
That's the
straight
tough part.
answer. If the voice is empowering you, it's authentic. And if it's not, it's not.
Huh.
It's that straightforward.
Boom. There you go, audience, huh?
I'm about to fall out of my chair.
Are you okay?
Breathe.
Just breathe. Yeah.
Just breathe. And people come in, and like myself, I too was blown away. I'm like, it can't be that simple. Of course it can. Otherwise, we wouldn't still be here as a species.
Right.
So the filters or the learnings or the wisdom that haven't been uploaded so that they're usable in the system are all banging around like a ping pong ball. And we want to just streamline it and shift some filters so that you naturally go where you want to grow. And you have to grow where you want to go where you want to grow.
Well said.
Kind of just keeps looping around.
It's
does.
almost as though you've spent some time working on this.
It's almost as if, I think, sort of,
It
yeah.
seems like you might have spent a bit of time.
So this year we're really excited because as we've been growing, it never occurred to us, as I said, we sort of missed the digital revolution in that all of our courses are still analog and required to be so by the boards.
Okay. It is a
Right.
simple.
It's very
piece,
simple. You
yeah.
do some multimedia prep before you come,
Yeah.
and then we play hands-on games
Yeah.
for 8 days to pull it into your awareness so that you know that you can do it.
Right.
It's truly that simple. However, for people that were going, hey, I heard you speak, and I'm in Australia, or I'm in China, and I'm not going to come in for your Designing Your Destiny weekend leadership course. So how do I get more information between there? And we were really, again, how do you reach out for community? So we've been thinking about this for a long time, and we're excited to announce that in 2020, we're launching Go Quantum University as an actual structured setup as if it were a university where there's open courses, and then there's a sequence of how you have to go through other courses, and in a variety of content streams. And one of them is this quantum area of what are the energetics? What is the energy of money? What are the 7 stages of manifestation? How do you tile your space? It was really fun this summer. I got to hang out with the Mavericks, which is a mastermind group
Okay.
of elite entrepreneurs, and they go to camp. And I mean, they really go to camp.
Did
They like, really
like
go
you're
to camp.
having marshmallows and hot dogs
Absolutely.
on the campfire.
With some a high-end liquor bar.
Oh,
However,
well, that sounds like Mavericks for sure.
we were actually in cabins at a camp, and I got to teach a la Harry Potter. We were joking. They named it Defense Against the Dark Arts.
Oh, of course.
And also for entrepreneurs, spellcasting for the entrepreneurs, which is really what we're doing all day, every day. Like if we take it out of the nomenclature, what are we doing? We're getting a focus or an intention. We're applying a lot of emotion to it so that we really have to want it. And then we're taking action. Well, if you do those 3 things, stuff shows up.
Right. It's inevitable.
Right.
Yeah.
And if you don't, then it doesn't. And I love the simplicity of that. To work the system that actually will bring you the happy, healthy, wealthy that we're seeking. And in my mind, that's how we're going to change the world.
Yeah, and you are. I can speak from firsthand experience because I had the good fortune and pleasure of attending your one day
Right.
course a few years back, and Dr. Kim worked with the group that was there that day on how to remove some blocks, I think was very specifically the topic. And for me personally, I think it goes back to the voice in your head that is telling you this story or this tape as you described it. And I had this change that happened that day from you very specifically.
Exciting.
And it removed something from my tape or filter or whatever you would call it. And it's no longer there. It's never a discussion anymore. And for me, internally.
Right.
And I share that story because
Thank you.
it was a great experience. It was a really good experience. And I would encourage folks who are interested in learning more about esoterics and how-tos, how to manage the unconscious mind, and many, many more things, would be to reach out to you and attend some of these
Absolutely.
courses and make an investment in yourself to make yourself better, because there's a whole other world going on out there.
Absolutely.
You know, we talk about Freemasonry making good men better, and there's a whole structure and system to that, And then there's this whole other world of stuff happening that you're very deeply involved in. So I would recommend to our audience, if you want to learn more about this type of information, to reach out to Dr. Kim. I mean, it's great you have the university coming on board next year, but I'm going to do the
You gonna spell it?
I'm going to spell it for you, Gino. Unless you want to take a stab at it.
No, spelling it is good.
Yeah. So to learn more information about Creatrix Go Quantum, it's very simply Creatrix, Creatrix, Go Quantum, GoQuantum.com.
Thank you.
And you can learn a lot more from Dr. Kim. In fact, we're having such a great discussion. With your permission, we'd like to go a little deeper into some of the esoteric topics, but we'll do it on a next episode.
I would love that. And by the way, if anyone's going to the website, The Hero's Journey and how to begin working with yourself, there is available complimentary for anyone to download. Mission Manifesto. It's an ebook with some worksheets. And we'll be offering some complimentary webinars to go with that, and all about, why we do what we do and how to shift that story into the hero's journey. Because really, that's what you're all on. It's what we're all on.
Brilliant. Well said. Well, we'll come back to you on the next episode.
I'd love that.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of The First Three Knocks. Happy to meet, sorry to part, happy to meet again.